Paris, on a private estate, a 68-year-old screen legend lives with her husband and over 100 animals.
Il y a César et Rosalie, Marius et Fanny.
She seldom travels, except to promote animal rights. But when she does speak out, her comments often ignite firestorms of protest. But Brigitte Bardot is used to controversy. During the 1960s, Bardot was the ultimate icon of sex.
She was young, and she was gorgeous. Brigitte was the girl you wished to live next door. And if she did, you'd move in.
Movie star, trendsetter, Bardot was a symbol of uninhibited desire, an image she flaunted both on and off the screen.
I used to lead a libertine life. I have changed husbands, lovers quite often.
What do you want?
To be beautiful and for you to love me.
On September 28, 1934, not far from France's other symbol, the Eiffel Tower, Brigitte Anne-Marie Bardot was born in the Paris apartment of her parents. Her father, Louis Bardot, was a successful businessman. Her mother, Anne-Marie, was a strict homemaker who showed little tenderness toward Brigitte and her younger sister, Mijanou.
Mummy and Daddy set the rules. The girls had to keep quiet. There wasn't too much freedom because it was a French family, and the children had to obey.
The sensitive Brigitte fought for any sign of affection from her mother and father. But at age 7, an incident occurred that, in Brigitte's mind, alienated her forever from her parents.
On the table, there was a very beautiful Chinese lamp, and we were under the table. We were playing Indians, and, well, the Indians pulled on the tablecloth. The Chinese lamp fell on the floor. And I remember that my parents were raving mad, and they said, "As of today, since you did such a stupid thing, you are no longer our daughter, and you will address us by using vous, the formal form of address, like a stranger would." It was as if a barrier, a wall had been erected in the warmth of my childhood with regard to my parents.
As a teenager, Brigitte was rigorously monitored, both at home, at dance class, and at Catholic school, where she was well-mannered and quiet. Inwardly, she dreamed of escaping her rigid world and hungered for love.
I did not have any animals, and my parents were not especially fond of animals. One day when they saw that I wanted to rescue a poor lost kitten, it was a big deal. We did find a way to keep the cat. One cat. It was a beautiful moment in my life as a little girl.
Brigitte's socially ambitious mother pushed both of her girls to do well in school and in dance. She also encouraged her beautiful 14-year-old daughter to work as a model.
She started modeling hats for a designer friend of her mother. These pictures got to magazines as important as Elle.
In 1949, Brigitte was amazed when her photo was used as a last-minute replacement for the cover of France's Elle magazine. Brigitte's name was not listed, but her image captivated film director Marc Madrague, who dispatched his young assistant to find the mysterious model. The 21-year-old assistant was named Roger Vadim, and he also had dreams of directing.
Vadim was a son of a Russian diplomat. He wasn't a tramp or anything like that. He was a well-brought-up young man, but a bit of a rebel. And rebels were famous in America, perhaps, but not in France.
Vadim
was exactly the opposite of what my parents would have wanted me to meet. What I mean is, he was the bohemian type, without any morality. He used to live as he pleased. I fell madly in love with this boy, who was so completely different from anybody I had ever known or seen in my life.
Unlike his boss, Marc Allaire, Vadim sensed promise in the striking 14-year-old. As for Bardot's parents, they hated the brash young foreigner from the start.
When Vadim would come to eat at our house, after he left, my mother would count her silver teaspoons because she was afraid that he might have taken them with him.
But by the time Brigitte was 15, Vadim had secretly become her first lover.
It was a very steamy love affair between the two. He was an expert lover. He taught her many things. Again, this was not Dad, this was someone else, this was freedom.
Brigitte grew defiant and told her parents that she and Roger were getting married. Her father replied by brandishing a gun at Vadim and announced that Brigitte would not marry until age 18. Weeks later, his angry daughter responded with a half-hearted suicide attempt, putting her head in a gas oven. But if she and Vadim couldn't yet marry, they did unite professionally.
He was writing scripts that she could do. He was trying to get other directors interested in her. He was making sure she was photographed at whatever function they could ever go to. He was training her for future stardom, and she loved it.
In 1952, Roger got the ravishing 17-year-old her first acting job, a tiny part in the comedy Crazy for Love. Brigitte found the long hours of filming dull and unrewarding. But weeks later, Vadim secured his fiancée a co-starring role in the salacious 1952 drama, The Girl in the Bikini.
The passionate story of a lonely girl on a lonely island with the hot blood of Corsica in her veins. Brigitte Bardot as an uninhibited child of nature stripped of all pretense. A lighthouse keeper's daughter who believes in dressing light. As far as the screen dares go with Brigitte Bardot, the girl in the bikini.
Brigitte took great pleasure in outraging her parents with her skimpy on-screen wardrobe and a brief nude scene. 9 months later, the 18-year-old infuriated her parents once again by marrying Roger Vadim. But Louis Bardot put a final barrier in his daughter's path after the couple married in the civil service and days before their wedding ceremony in a church.
We did not have an apartment, so that night we slept over at my parents' house. He slept on the couch in my father's office, and I slept in my own bedroom, and he was not even allowed to come in and kiss me goodnight. We did not really care. We had had our wedding night a long time ago.
Now in total control of Brigitte, Vadim threw himself into finding her film roles. He molded her personality and movement into his fantasy image of a screen goddess.
He's very much a Svengali shaping her. It's the Pygmalion story of the older man shaping the woman into, in this case, not only being his fantasy, but the fantasy of every man.
He developed that wild and rebellious streak, which is a somewhat special trait of my personality.
Vadim stage managed his wife's electrifying appearance at the 1953 Cannes Film Festival.
By the 50s, events at Cannes, other than the films, became important. Who was seen on the beach? Whose bikini top fell off? What starlet went topless? Brigitte Bardot did a number of very carefully orchestrated appearances at Cannes that were also part of turning her into a star.
At age 20, Brigitte made her English language film debut with a showy part in the British comedy Doctor at Sea.
Are you allergic to anything? Ship's doctors, for example?
Oh, I haven't noticed.
In France, Brigitte's earthy eroticism powered a string of low-budget comedies like That Naughty Girl.
What a wonderfully gay and happy picture this is. More romantic than you've a right to expect. And she's lovelier than you ever imagined. Look at her and love her. Brigitte Bardot as Mademoiselle Pigalle.
In America, Eisenhower-era filmmakers were straitjacketed by a strict production code which banned any nudity or explicit erotic content. Whatever sex made it to movie screens was conveyed only by suggestion.
Particularly in American movies, like poor Marilyn's movies, would be play acting about sex, joking about sex.
Because now I'm going to take you in my arms and kiss you. very quickly and very hard.
Wait a minute!
Never really getting in bed with anybody.
But films like Bardot's were starting to find appreciative audiences in America's more cosmopolitan movie houses.
It had the nickname the art skinema, because you would see the likes of Sophia Loren and Gina Lollobrigida in peasant blouses.
This is the period in the United States, for example, of the Kinsey Report, Playboy magazine starting in 1953. So new sexual identities are being formed.
At age 20, Brigitte Bardot was a busy actress, an achievement she hadn't pursued or wanted. But Roger Vadim had bigger ambitions, and for her next creation, he wasn't afraid to play God.
You're 22, Miss Bardot, and you're one of the highest paid actresses in France. What do you think your success is due to?
I don't know.
You don't think it's got something to do with the sexy parts you play in your films?
Oh, yes. Maybe, yes.
Do you really enjoy making this kind of film, or do you want to be a serious actress?
Oh, no, I prefer this kind of film. I will be a serious actress when I will be older.
In 1956, Brigitte Bardot traveled to Saint-Tropez to begin work on a new film directed and written by her husband, Roger Vadim. This time, Vadim had a good-sized budget and a racy script that showcased Brigitte's rebellious sexuality. It was called And God Created Woman.
Here is the drama of the life and loves of a young girl of today. Tormented by the desires that sweep her from a love she yearned for. A love she attains in a way she could never dream. A sizzling new personality in a film that will fulfill your every expectation.
Stop laughing.
Her sexuality doesn't seem forced. It's almost like a natural energy. You don't feel that the fantasy is of a woman who has guiles. She's a force of nature.
Set in the pagan paradise of the French Riviera, swirls the fast-moving, fascinating story of a demon-driven temptress.
But in France, sexy melodramas were hardly new, and at first, audiences there ignored the film.
It was nothing. It had this young girl who pouted a lot and her clothes kept falling off, but no big deal. Then it went across the water to England. Explosion. The British loved the saucy French girls, the saucy French films. How lovely. And it was X certificate, which means you had to be a certain age to get in, so it must have been forbidden fruit. Wow!
American filmgoers raised on sexual innuendo were even more excited by the movie's raw, explicit sexuality. And box office only grew when religious groups blasted Brigitte as a creation not of God, but of the devil.
It's condemned by the Catholic Legion of Decency. It's given a C rating, which means going to it counts as a mortal sin. So it's not simply you'll be in purgatory for a while. You are damned if you see a C-rated film.
Il est parti aux États-Unis.
It was sent over to the United States and came back with a tremendous success. The Americans, that's you. Thank you.
The film's surprising profits helped loosen the bonds of Hollywood censorship. Critics around the world hailed the 22-year-old as a fresh new wave in movie sex.
I gave a new image of the way you should be in life, in the movies. New, blonde, free, not stuffy, not hung up, not like a little lady's maid, no little corset, no little collar, no little thing, but stark naked.
She was delivering. She took certain clothes off. She saw mainly her posterior. BB began to be Brigitte Bardot or bare bottom, one or the other.
I used to show my behind. At the time, you were not supposed to show your behind. It was very shocking. Well, now it has become an absolutely normal occurrence.
But by the time Bardot became a sensation, her marriage to Roger Vadim had reached an amicable end.
She was having an affair with her leading man in God Created Woman, but you could say they were pushed into that by Vadim anyway, who wanted more realism on the screen.
He taught me how to be so free that as a result, I left him for another man. That was his price to pay. I wanted to experience this life that I had been prevented from living. Well, okay, I was married, but just because I was married did not mean that I would always stay with the same man.
But obviously he opened the door for her. He opened the door to movies, he opened the door to sex, he opened the door to freedom.
Bardot's wild eroticism ignited a string of French comedies and dramas. She'd become one of France's most celebrated exports, influencing perceptions of beauty around the world.
You are something most unusual. In America, although you do your pictures in French, you are one of America's most popular actresses. Why? Do you have any idea why?
I don't know.
Our taste in bodies changed. Marilyn Monroe and Gina Lollobrigida and Sophia Loren were busty, voluptuous, over-endowed women. Brigitte Bardot was lithe and athletic. Bardot showed up in capri pants and sailor outfits and danced on tops of tables when she chose to wear clothes.
Bardot had enjoyed the worldwide attention at first, but by 1959, the strong-willed 24-year-old was beginning to feel harassed by her celebrity. Cameramen and fans followed her everywhere, and the media that made Bardot a household name were beginning to turn against her.
I was always criticized. They used to say, Brigitte Bardot, she's a sex kitten. She's the devil incarnated. She behaves outrageously. All my life, it's been like that.
It is said that you are not a happy person.
I am not an happy person.
I have heard you quoted as saying.
Yes, I am very happy.
You are happy.
Yes.
You think you have everything in life you want?
Of course.
What are the things that you want from life?
Nothing.
Nothing at all?
No, nothing. I'm very, very happy.
The press reveled in exposing each new visitor to Bardot's bedroom. New to the list was her latest co-star, Jacques Charrier, who met Brigitte on the 1959 comedy Babette Goes to War.
The Brigitte Bardot, who was merely a goddess of love, the cuddliest doll in the world, the dream girl of 75 million red-blooded American males, now is one of the funniest comedians on the screen. Just as beautiful, just as alluring, Brigitte Bardot wins medal for her best and funniest film, co-starring Jacques Charrier.
She fell for him, just as she'd fallen for all the others, but this seemed to be somewhat deeper. He was semi-bourgeois himself. He was almost the kind of son-in-law that her father would have approved of.
Bardot was swept away by her handsome co-star, but their romance had an unexpected consequence. France's symbol of sex was about to become a mother.
Thursday.
Brigitte Bardot, at age 24, had no desire to be a parent. But in 1959, Jacques Charrier convinced Brigitte to keep their child and to marry him. It was a decision she regretted soon after their wedding. A paparazzi free-for-all.
It was terrible. It was a nightmare. The photographers had forced their way into City Hall. It caused a scandal.
Bardot had been honest about her disinterest in having children, but after the birth of her son Nicolas became the news story of 1960, the 25-year-old star was attacked by the press for her lack of maternal instinct.
I was not ready at all to have a child. It was really not the right moment to have a child. So that was very stressful for me because I knew that I was unable to do what you must do to take care of a child. I was myself already so overwhelmed by the photographers, consumed by fame, stardom. I was swallowed up by all that.
By now, her marriage was equally miserable. Jacques had been ordered to report to Nice to do a mandatory 2 years of service in the French military.
And what did he find when he got in the army? Everybody had pin-ups of his wife. If she had a problem with her image, what do you think he had with her image? And of course, total breakdown, a suicide attempt, and bailed out the army. The marriage was over, and that was the end of that.
After divorcing Brigitte, Jacques Charrier was given custody of Nicolas. By now, Bardot was a deeply polarizing figure, the subject of fan mail and death threats, amid non-stop press coverage that pushed her closer to the edge of a breakdown.
She couldn't go out in the street, she couldn't go to a restaurant, she couldn't eat. She was changing boyfriends rapidly, as if that might help her be anonymous. She was trapped.
Get out of here, all of you! Get out! Get out!
All Jill wanted was a man to hold in the privacy of her heart. But she was too much public property to have a very private affair.
It was a little bit like living in hell. You are slandered. People debase you a lot. They act like they know things. They invent things. They cause you a lot of pain. They hurt you a lot. That is true.
She had a horrendous experience when she went to visit a friend and was going up in a lift, and a cleaning lady was in a lift and started screaming at her and trying to attack her with whatever implement she had in her hand, because you earn all this money by taking your clothes off, and my boys are over there in the war in Algeria, etc. That marked her for life. She was very scared to go out after something like that.
This is the face. This is the woman. Bardot, the unforgettable.
You decided to give up the sort of sexy role we're used to seeing you in.
I'm not giving them up completely. I want to change, not to do always the same kind of parts. And I think the next film will be sexy.
The next one after this.
The 25-year-old's fragile grip on her emotions was about to take another hit. Her next film, the courtroom drama The Truth, was directed by Henri-Georges Clouzot, often called the French Alfred Hitchcock. Clouzot also shared Hitchcock's gift for manipulation, and although Bardot was proud of her performance, it was her most excruciating professional experience.
A story that sets a new standard in the making of motion pictures. See the new Bardot, directed by Clouzot, France's most startling and brilliant director.
Clouzot was diabolical. He would tell me things to put me in the right frame of mind for the movie. Your life is over. You will never succeed at anything again. You have a bad reputation.
Bon, moteur.
All this so that in the court, in front of the jurors and all that, I would be destroyed. The character that I am playing swallows sleeping pills. We were about to wrap for the day, and I asked for some aspirin, and instead of giving me aspirin, he slipped me 2 sleeping pills, but I did not know. As a result, 2 minutes later, I was sleeping, snoring, drooling, etc. He destroyed whatever strength I had in me in order to give me that appearance of distress in the film.
The pressure was too much. In September 1960, the day of her 26th birthday, Brigitte Bardot's unconscious body was found outside her home. She had slashed her wrists and taken an overdose of pills, just like the character she played in The Truth. The actress was rushed to the hospital where she was diagnosed as suffering from nervous depression.
I felt cornered, trapped, smothered to the point of suffocation, to the point of just wanting to die. I am pretty vulnerable. I am very different from being a star. Inside myself, I am not a star at all. I need to be protected, to be taken care of, and, well, at the same time, I also want to be very bossy and rule with an iron hand. It is very difficult to live with me. I even have trouble putting up with myself.
Just 3 months after attempting suicide, Brigitte Bardot returned to the only life she knew, making films. By 1961, she had already appeared in 29 movies. Some had top directors, like avant-garde maverick Jean-Luc Godard on the drama Contempt.
Bardot at her bare, bold, and brazen best, bewitching as a brunette, breaking all the rules in the game of love.
But no matter how prestigious the project, their exhausted star couldn't have cared less.
She didn't seem interested in any of them. She had a contract, she signed it, she kept it, made a film, moved on, went off on holiday, had a new boyfriend, came back, made another movie, and very wisely invested her money.
The 29-year-old did rise to one acting challenge when she was paired in 1964 with another French film icon, Jean Moreau, in the rollicking comedy Viva Maria.
There was a competition between the two of us because she wanted to be better than me and I wanted to be better than her, and that was very good. It gave us the punch to be the best possible, each in our own style.
Viva Bardot! Viva Moreau! Viva Maria!
For years, Brigitte had resisted offers to come to America. In 1965, a major press push for Viva Maria finally took Bardot to New York and Los Angeles. America got its first close-up look at the French sex goddess. As for Bardot, she would have seen more of America by watching TV at home.
Ça a été extraordinaire.
It was extraordinary. I saw neither New York nor Los Angeles because I was stuck in my hotel room. There were so many photographers. A shard of flashbulb hit me in the eye. It damaged my retina, and I had to wear a black eye patch for I don't know how long. It was complete insanity.
As for making Hollywood movies, Bardot still said no.
Hollywood was Marilyn, and look how they treated Marilyn, she would say. I'm French, I'll stay here. If they want me, they can come here.
In 1965, Hollywood finally agreed to the 30-year-old's terms. 20th Century Fox sent cast and crew to Paris to film a Bardot cameo in the comedy Dear Brigitte, starring Jimmy Stewart and 10-year-old Billy Mooney.
B.B.
Brigitte Bardot.
Well, son, you never told me you corresponded with her.
You never asked me.
Oh, I never thought about it. Well, you wrote to her, huh?
Every night.
Every night?
Dear Brigitte, which is about an American little boy madly in love with Brigitte Bardot, and very much about this American fascination with things French.
This is the house of Brigitte Bardot.
So they recreated her home in Paris and shot for less than a week. It must have cost a fortune, but that was the only way she agreed to be in the movie.
My name is Leaf.
Which one is Erasmus? Enchantée, Mademoiselle Bardot. Mais vous parlez français? C'est merveilleux. Comme je suis contente de vous connaître. Je vous remercie pour toutes les gentilles lettres que vous m'avez envoyées.
I was the first American actor to get a screen kiss from Brigitte Bardot. I don't know if I was the first American actor to get a kiss from Brigitte Bardot, but on screen anyway, it was Mumi. Oh, she was a fabulous kisser.
Oh, sweet.
'20th Century Fox took a look at the dailies, and we went back and did it again the next day because they felt she was showing too much cleavage. And they had her put a corsage on her dress right at the base of her cleavage.
Erasmus, have you lost your tongue?
Don't you want to say something, Raz?
Well, I sat next to her, like, with her arm around me for many hours the first day before the corsage was added. And though I was only 10 years old, I was well aware of the opportunity I had to get a great view of her entire being. And it was indeed a great view.
Where are you taking her?
To my bedroom. We'll be back.
I remember how extremely professional James Stewart was. It made quite an impression on me, and I said to myself, this is the way American people work. Very disciplined, very professional. And I think that is why I would have never been able to have a career in the United States. I am too crazy.
By 1966, new styles of fashion, movies, and music were sweeping the world, and 31-year-old Brigitte Bardot was now competing with a younger generation of erotic icons. But Bardot herself was changing with the times, adopting a new look, and turning pop singer.
She starts to play into that, sporting miniskirts, being part of the new generation. It seems to me appropriate that one of her hit songs in the 60s is Bonnie and Clyde, a song that is about the woman as rebel, and especially given the film, given Faye Dunaway, is about how you make your rebellion through clothing as much as through crime against the system.
But Bardot hadn't changed her style when it came to her need for many lovers.
The problem with all the boyfriends is, did they love her or did they love Brigitte Bardot? And was the image true? And that was probably more upsetting to find that they were in love with the wrong side of Bardot than those trying to make money out of her and exploit her. And there were a lot of both.
In 1966, a man entered Bardot's life who didn't need her money. Gunter Sachs was a millionaire industrialist and playboy, whose courtship of the superstar was unexpected, unrelenting, and outrageous.
I was completely stunned, delighted. He took a helicopter, and from above he just dropped roses that fell all over the garden. One day he took a helicopter, threw his suitcases in the ocean, dived in, and he arrived here with his suitcases, swimming, Vuitton suitcases.
1 month later, Gunter and Brigitte married in Las Vegas, flying there on a jet loaned by Gunter's friend, Ted Kennedy. Bardot's lifestyle seemed the height of glamour, but her movies were starting to misfire at the box office. In 1968, the 33-year-old teamed with Sean Connery for the western Shalako. But instead of fireworks between BB and James Bond, there was only fizzle.
I would like very much for you to make love to me. But it's impossible.
What if I just took what I wanted?
I would kill you.
Well, at least I'd die happy.
The film is generally very poorly received. The critics have their claws out for her. The real icon in that film is, by that time, Sean Connery. And if anybody goes to the film, it's to see James Bond, not Brigitte Bardot.
Now, this surely must be something you have thought about in the future, in terms of what is going to happen to your career.
I don't know what it will happen with my career. I know only what it will happen now with me. I don't know. I don't want to think about the future.
By 1968, Brigitte's high-flying marriage to Gunter Sachs had also fallen back to earth. Bardot was tired of their non-stop travel and the entourage that surrounded them. In 1969, the pair divorced.
I quickly found it was very superficial and without much interest. This was not at all the real me. It was wonderful, but...
15 years earlier, Bardot had helped usher in an age of sexual frankness on film screens. But by the early 1970s, others had pushed that candor all the way into X-rated porn. The actress hated the trend, and her attempts to seem with it in her latest movies didn't please fans or critics.
What do you want?
To be beautiful, and for you to love me.
Bardot, living a timeless intermezzo filled with truth, beauty, and abandon.
Bardot's films almost seem to start to look like softcore porn, attempts to corner a sex market. And I think she realizes that it's time to leave the cinema.
She always said she'd retire when the image in the mirror told her to and when her fans told her to. She said that Brigitte Bardot will never be 40. And so she quit at 39.
That's how I one day managed to say ciao to the movie business. Nobody believed it. Everybody was saying she is having a tantrum. She is going to come back.
But leaving the cinema hardly meant an end to drama or controversy for Brigitte Bardot. In fact, in the years to follow, she would become more notorious than ever. Throughout the 1970s, Brigitte Bardot continued to be hounded by photographers. Now in her 40s, she endured frightening encounters with deranged fans and dangerous stalkers. These experiences darkened her perception of the world around her.
There are people who came here, who broke into my living room, who spent the night in my bed. There are people who arrived with their baggage in hand, saying they were coming to spend 1 week. All men. I was very vulnerable when I was alone.
As her 50th birthday approached, Bardot felt lonely and frustrated. Attempts to connect with her estranged son, Nicolas, had failed on both sides. She also fought a private and successful battle with breast cancer. But one cause did make Brigitte feel that life was worth living. Bardot's passion for animals could be traced back to her childhood, a time when she transferred affection she missed at home to whatever four-legged creatures she could find.
Yes, I love dogs.
What kind of dog have you got?
I have a little black spaniel cocker.
In the 1970s, the former actress turned that passion into a purpose for living.
La vivisection.
Vivisection, slaughterhouses. These things moved me deeply. I was outraged, and I thought it was important that somebody famous condemn all these things that man has done to animals.
During the 1980s, Bardot became increasingly outspoken, protesting the clubbing of seals in Canada and Greenland, and meeting with French President François Mitterrand and other world leaders.
For her, animals are almost the male species. She prefers them to men. She once said when she sold all her things to raise money for the foundation, all her proud possessions, photos and dresses from movies, etc., she said, I've given my best years to man, and I'll give the rest of my years to animals.
In 1986, the 52-year-old launched the Brigitte Bardot Foundation. Within a decade, it boasted 27,000 members in 42 countries and a list of accomplishments around the globe.
I have chosen the most difficult fight, the most despised and also the most important in my eyes. It is defending and protecting animals, especially since animals have no way to defend themselves.
In 1992, the 57-year-old met the man who would become her partner in her struggles. Bernard Dormal was a film distributor and a close friend of controversial right-wing politician Jean-Marie Le Pen. Bardot, whose own politics were increasingly conservative, found Bernard fascinating.
I don't know why, but as she was leaving, I gave her a kiss goodbye, and I whispered 2 or 3 nice words that must have moved her. Women are so mysterious. All that for a kind word. This actually proves that she has a childlike side to her.
2 months later, the couple quietly married.
My current husband loves me for myself and not my image, and I am going to tell you, he is really patient because it is not easy to love a woman who takes care of animals all day long.
Voilà. Allez, un concurrent par-ci, un concurrent par-là.
My role is to try to protect her, to help her, and to have her love me. She leads a very difficult fight, which tires her tremendously, and I wish that from time to time she would leave more time for herself.
By the 1990s, Bardot had also become a blunt critic of French society, and many who listened to her were disturbed by what they heard. In 1998, the 64-year-old was charged with slander and fined over $3,000 by a French court for comments she had made in an article blasting Islamic immigrants to France. Her 2003 book, A Cry in Silence, sparked further controversy for passages in which Bardot angrily criticized the homeless, interracial children, and homosexuals.
But in many quarters, there's a lot of suspicion and dismay at her move towards the political right. She says that Jean-Marie Le Pen is one of the only two politicians she has any respect for, and she finds him a graceful and intelligent man, a person that most people would think of as a right-wing thug. So for a lot of people, she's damaged her image.
I have a slight despising for humanity in general. I find that human beings have become inhuman, very close to being like robots. Very few people have nice things to say or do.
Mélodie! César!
I have a lot of mistrust with respect to most of this humanity that scares me, and that has also hurt me deeply. That is the reason, I think.
Despite the controversy she continues to trigger, Bardot's iconic image as a sex goddess still finds new admirers and imitators.
You have Claudia Schiffer very clearly basing herself on Bardot. So I think there is an attempt to say, let's look for what's strong within her image, which is women standing up for themselves.
Nearly half a century after she exploded onto movie screens, Brigitte Bardot has yet to surrender her place in the world's erotic imagination.
I would like very much for you to make love to me.
As a fiery, liberated woman and a blazing icon of the sexual revolution.
She had an enormous impact on everything she touched. She had an impact on cinema, she had an impact on fashion. She led the field everywhere. And as far as sex on screen was concerned, there was nobody better. And sex off screen, apparently there was nobody better either.
Des regrets, non, j'ai pas.
Regrets? No, I don't have any. Because I believe that I've always done what I needed to do at the time it was needed in order precisely not to have any regrets.
Bon, alors maintenant, je voudrais... I give a big kiss to American people. I adore you. Mm.
Despite her desire to avoid the spotlight, controversy continued to swirl around Brigitte Bardot in May 2004, when she was charged with inciting racial hatred in her best-selling book, A Cry in Silence, by expressing worries about the infiltration of France by Islamic immigrants. She was convicted in June and ordered to pay $6,000, the fourth such fine for the former sex symbol since 1997. Her luck in dealing with animals is a bit better. The Brigitte Bardot Foundation is active around the world, successfully challenging corporations and governments to protect animal rights. Now in her 7th decade, this complex, outspoken woman promises to remain as untamed as ever.